Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Near Memo. Today with very special, super special guest star Cindy Krum of Mobile Moxie, who we've had on before, but is always a great guest. Welcome, Cindy.
Hello.
And as always, me in my purple t-shirt and Mike in his blue t-shirt, which has some writing on it. What does it say?
Never underestimate an old guy on a bicycle.
Okay, all right. So this is episode 167, but not really, because we've had a couple of archive episodes in the past couple of weeks. But technically we're calling this episode 167. And today we will be talking about some EEAT and click data and Cindy's general thoughts about the state of those things. We'll be talking about voice as an interface and whether it can expand from where it is, even though there are a lot of voice queries. I mean, there was a lot of hype around voice search, and maybe with LLMs and AI, we're now going to get a sort of a new opportunity around that. And then a kind of cluster of search-related things, including introducing what it's calling generative search, which looks like a better version of the AI overview, AI organized pages that Google talked about at Google I/O, its developer conference. I don't know if it's a better version, but it's an interesting announcement. So Cindy, why don't you start us off with your observations about the state of EAT and click data and your general reflections on SEO?
Yeah, sure. So the talk that I've been doing at conferences that's been getting a lot of good feedback recently is called EEAT or SOUP. And it uses SOUP as an analogy for EEAT signals. And basically the idea is sometimes you have really fine, like thin filtered soup, and sometimes you have chunky soup. And so that's where YMYL comes in. Like sometimes you need a lot of fine filtering for EEAT, and sometimes you need less. But the idea is basically when Google is ranking things, especially based on EEAT, they're leaning much harder on click data than we've ever realized. You know, it came out of the DOJ case that Google uses click data as basically 1/3 of the algorithm, click data or engagement data using clicks as a proxy for engagement. And so I think that the only way that Google could make search and quality evaluations like that manageable is if it was based on click data. If rankings were heavily weighted on click data, especially in high YMYLY topics, and maybe less or like different ingredients in low YMYL topics. So the example I've been giving, I know that's kind of intense, a lot of words, but the example I've been giving is the concept of flossing. So for years, when someone searched for anything related to flossing, it was a dental query. It might have some YMYL, but you're not going to go to the hospital because of flossing. But then all of a sudden, a dance came out that was called flossing or the floss dance or whatever, where people are going like this. You don't have to know the dance.
That's like a TikTok thing?
It's like a TikTok thing. Yeah,
it was pre-TikTok, but yeah.
Yeah. It was pre-TikTok huge in the US, but people around the world were doing it, you know. Uh-huh. And so Google had to quickly understand, based on clicks, probably, when people were searching for flossing and clicking on low in the results on some video of a kid doing a dance, that the meaning of flossing had changed. And they had to do this in every language around the world, in every country, right? Really quickly. It's not like anyone called Google to say, hey, the meaning of this query has changed. And so the only way they could do something like that in real time at scale is based on user interactions and engagement. And the interesting thing there is the disparity or the difference between how much YMYL, how much risk is associated in a query about a viral dance versus in a query about something that's dental or medical or something like that. They can be kind of loosey-goosey and rank lots of different stuff for something that's about a viral dance, but they need to be more tuned in and precise when it's something that has risk associated with it, even the minimal risk of flossing, right? So that's kind of the idea. Is I think that what Google was doing was looking at what's getting clicks and looking at your pages and saying, do these have the same signals, whatever those signals are? Not like a checklist of this, that, it has schema, it has head, it's not a consistent checklist. It's variable based on the query, the location, and all the other things. And so they're just saying, here's your site, here's what's getting engagement. Do they have similar signals? Whatever those signals are. And we probably won't know, and Google won't know. They don't have time to update the signals. So they're just looking for kind of a match of, this is getting engagement for this query. You look a lot like that. Let's try you out. So that's the theory. You like it?
Convincing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anything else would be expensive. They couldn't manage it.
You're using that as sort of a case study to validate the idea that that they have to use clicks, they have to use engagement.
Yeah, sort of a thought experiment, and it makes a lot of sense. I've been looking at a lot of local results, and one of the things I am seeing is a lot of faceted search insertions. People also ask, people also search for, people search again for. I mean, literally to the point where a 5 or 6 scroll window might have 3 of those elements on it, only 3 organic elements, and the rest is local stuff. I don't search for flossing much, but I'm curious if you're seeing this faceting or these modules taking up so much room in these broader.
Yes, I definitely am. And I see them as a way to test new meaning of a query.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're
Google's using them to test query meaning.
Yes, and the results of the test come in based on engagement. So they're either, when they put people also ask in, they're trying to refine the query for you and be like, did you mean to search for this longer phrase or this more in-depth version of the topic? Or were you talking about a different understanding of this word?
Oh, that's very interesting. Right. I just saw them as annoying and taking up space, but you're justifying their existence.
It's the best way in SEO right now to skip the line, is to get into people also ask. You don't have to work your way up in the rankings. You just skip the line and get into people also ask.
How much engagement, though, with people also ask is there? Is there a lot? I mean, we in our work doing user testing, we do not see a lot of engagement with people also ask or similar modules. We see them appear. They're often very prominent on the page, and there's some engagement, but it's not that. I don't know, Mike, if you would disagree. It's not that significant.
No, I just want to give Cindy a little context. We do behavioral research. We'll put together a panel of 200 or 300 people, give them a job, and then ask them to solve the job using Google. And in that context, where they have they know sort of where they're going, we see low engagement with these additional modules. Now, they all behave a little different. Like, people also ask, is a pop-out, drop-down, or, it doesn't take you to a different page. It sort of answers the question right there. Whereas people also search for might take you to a whole new search. People search next for is, sort of part of the funnel idea. So that's what we're seeing, low engagement with those, but high percentage of pixels devoted to them.
So a couple of things here. Number one, were you counting click-through as engagement, or were you just counting clicks on and expansion, the engagement?
We're counting clicks on the expansion as an engagement. Any indication, even them saying, "Oh, I would normally click on this and look," that's counted as. But
let's not get totally sidetracked with this, because I think this is a kind of a rabbit hole. It's an interesting discussion in itself, but I think Cindy's theory is really interesting, that Google is using this as a way to sort of educate itself about the query. I think that's very interesting.
It fits with what I was saying previously about Google's MUM language learning model, where the example that they give is, you search for Mount Fuji. Do you want to hike Mount Fuji? Do you want to paint Mount Fuji? Like, they're trying to get you into a funnel.
Yeah.
Or figure out what your next move is going to be, so that they can serve the right ads and serve the right search results and stuff like that.
Well, it's interesting. This is something that David was particularly interested in. There was a demo at some point. I don't know what context it appeared in, where there was a kind of a funnel organized interactive search. It was a demonstration, I guess, of some AI experience where there was sort of general sort of a series of questions that was taking a person from a very broad proposition to something very specific. And I can't, Mike, you remember that? I can't tell.
I thought it was like spend a day with your child in Seattle or something like that.
Something like that. And so Google was doing exactly what you're describing, but in a much more explicit way with an AI conversational search model, which is kind of interesting. So this would seem to be the crude version of that. Go ahead.
If you don't mind, I want to take the EEAT thing a little bit further and give you an example, because I think you guys will remember when Target got into hot water because they sent a targeted mailer to a 16 or a 17-year-old girl, and it was about upcoming pregnancy.
Right.
And
she didn't know she was pregnant or something.
Well, no, her parents didn't know she was pregnant, and she was still living at home. She knew. But what Target's response was like, we have a machine learning algorithm that just knows that people who buy this and that and this and that are often probably pregnant. And it's not like we programmed that. We've just been watching what people buy and looking at it over time. And so we backed into the idea that these are signals that someone's pregnant. They didn't actually specifically think, this girl's pregnant, let's mail her. And I think that's how EEAT works in the click results. And so the thing I say in my talk is, like, Google doesn't know what's in the soup. They just know they like it. Right? Like, they don't have a list that they're looking for every single time, because it changes based on all the history with that query and the engagement.
Yeah.
So just quick question to maybe summarize this. So technical SEO, title tags, content, page engagement is all needed to, one, get ranked, and two, to keep people there. So
yes. And I think a lot of the things we've been counting as EEAT signals work, but we're attributing it wrong. So things like schema should help with EEAT, but they also help with how you look in the search results. So they're going to drive more clicks.
Right. Yeah, we see that a lot.
So SEOs have been treating all of these technical signals, technical recommendations as intrinsically meaningful, right? That Google is going to index you better if you do these technical things. But really, what you're saying, if I'm drawing the correct inferences, is that the schema really helps cause clicks and engagement, and that's what Google's really paying attention to.
Yeah, same thing. Joy Hawkins had a tweet that was like a plumber who didn't have prices on their site. All of a sudden they added prices on their site and they started ranking better, and people called it EEAT. And yeah, maybe, but I don't think Google is like, we look for prices here, we don't look for prices there. I think Google just saw that when a site had prices, people were more engaged.
Right. We've seen, just to reinforce this, we've seen in Europe where they now are again allowing local businesses to use review schema for their own reviews in Europe.
It's a big impact.
It's a big engagement impact. I mean, people will go really deep in the SERPs for that.
It also
for the
speaks
review stars.
What the search liaisons and all of the webmaster people have been saying is, like, you saw Danny get really frustrated last February, and he was like, I don't know how, like, his tweets were frustrated when people were asking about EEAT, and he just kept saying, like, I don't know how many times I have to tell you, just do stuff that people like.
Well, so this is the bridge to that. This is the missing piece.
This is why that's all he can say, because he doesn't know what's making that stuff outrank it.
Right. Yeah. So what he's saying in effect is, users like this content, and that's why it ranks. And so you need to address your users' needs and interests. And if you do that, they will click, and we will hear that, and that will help us.
Yes. And as SEOs, we hear make great content that your users like, and we're like, come on, give me something. But it's actually, that was what was meant, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's something
say outright, it's click data.
Yeah. But I mean, why not? Why couldn't they be transparent about that? Because then you would have a bunch of bots clicking everything. Well, that's true. Oh, so they just had to perpetuate the lie. They had to perpetuate the lie because they had been lying about it.
It's part of the court case. They can't admit it on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they haven't really.
This is a side of you I haven't seen before, Cindy, and I really like it.
They haven't really acknowledged what came out of that in terms of clickstream data and user engagement data. I don't think. I mean,
no, because
there was a talk that is she Elizabeth Tucker, is that the woman's name from Google, that has been recently sort of they brought her out as a spokesperson for search recently, and she did a Q&A, maybe it was with Search Engine Land, I don't remember, with Barry or something, might have been at with Barry, where I think there was some acknowledgement of user engagement signals, but it was pretty tepid, as I recall. But they haven't really addressed that sort of the elephant in the room since those revelations from the DOJ antitrust case.
Well, it kind of blows up the Chinese wall between paid and organic, right? Because organic, we knew if you got lots of clicks on your ad, you had a cheaper price, right? It was part of their algorithm for ranking and paid. And a not so subtle incentive to advertise. Yeah.
So you also said, before we move on, you also said that you didn't think SEOs were paying enough attention to this user engagement click story, and I sort of was skeptical about that because there's been so much coverage of it in the sort of technology press and search specific blogs and things like that. What leads you to believe that people aren't paying enough attention to the user engagement material?
Because I haven't seen any of the mainstream SEO publications publish a 10-step tutorial on driving click-through. Right? They're just doing the same old things. They're not saying like how to game click-through or how to, use what you've got to have better click-through, or how to take something from, position 6 to position 3 by just mucking with the title tag and meta description, because that's so passé, right? We don't want to talk about title tags and meta descriptions anymore. And Google may or may not honor it. But I think that talking about how to drive click-through rather than only driving rankings, like we have to reverse the order a little bit. No one's doing that yet, including me. I'm guilty. I've been busy. I could have written it.
We see in our research, particularly in price-driven search queries, people are very compelled by title tags and meta descriptions. Very compelled by it. If it's particularly in price-driven environments, this is like single most important thing for them.
Right. I mean, like we did a project in the self-storage space, and companies that, brands were very obviously, people clicked on brands. Well, not obviously, but people clicked on brands, which is something that many people have been discussing. Familiar brands, and also when price was in the title tag, discount, first month free, whatever it was, that was enormously impactful.
Yeah, it drives clicks, behavior, which is what you want anyway. But then also, if you have sustained clicks on that query for long enough, you're going to see an increase in rankings.
Exactly. All right, let's move on.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.